Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Unqualified Film Bros podcast. Riley's back, pulling double duty, subbing for Declan and Ben. He will be having all of their normal arguments against himself. You know me and Max, so I don't have to introduce ourselves, but happy episode 101, Max. We're
Happy
back.
101, George.
Damn, I didn't know that. That's
Riley
crazy.
watched last week's episode. He promises.
Yeah, been there. I heard that it was a draft of some sort, but I've kind of forget the real aspects of it.
It
All
was
right,
a
so is
draft. It
Max.
was actually fun. It was a
It was
good
a good time.
draft. Yeah. It was just drafting performances from movies that we'd already reviewed on the pod. So it was
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. Okay.
interesting.
George told me about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so this week, as you can tell by my headgear, we are talking about Dumb Money, the new movie from Craig Gillespie, talking about the rise and fall of GameStop stock from a couple years ago, based on a novel that came from real events that happened 2 years ago, a wicked fast turnaround. What'd you guys think?
I like that was my first reaction when I saw the trailer, however many months ago. I was like, that was so fast how quickly they made this movie. I couldn't believe it. I thought there must have been a mistake, and I was thinking about like some other Wall Street incident. I was like, this can't be right. How did they do that so quickly? So that was pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna jump off of that too. I had the same thought. But I also was like I'd forgotten all of the Robin Hood stuff.
Me
Like
too.
that even happened and that was like connected to it all. Like I remembered Robin Hood. I remember it going away basically just as fast as it popped up. But I'd completely forgotten the GameStop connection between it. And I could have swore when I first saw the trailer that this GameStop thing happened in like 2015 or something.
Yeah, I remembered because working in TV news, the GameStop thing was honestly a really big week.
Yeah.
Just with how it was impacting the stock market and how it was, you know, causing problems with government regulation and the SEC and everything that we saw in the movie. Um, they worked in the congressional hearings with real life members of Congress really, really well. But we'll get into that. And just remembering being at work, and I've only been working in TV news for 3.5 years. So to think of how recently all of this shit happened,
Mhm.
it was an insanely quick turnaround. But
Especially like, with the production level it was at, like getting the actors that they had, a lot of really popular names, a lot of really hot names as well. That was impressive.
yeah, so let's get into the cast. I want to talk first and foremost about our star, my man Paul Dano.
Shailene
This
Woodley.
guy, I think the most recent thing we've seen him in was the Batman.
Most recent thing I've seen him in, yeah.
I think
I
that's
don't
the
know.
only thing that we've done on the pod with Paul Dano.
Yeah, slight tangent. I was thinking last week about which actor we've probably talked about the most films for. I think Margot Robbie at this point. I think we've done three Margot Robbie
Three.
movies.
We've done three. Barbie, Babylon. Oh
Amsterdam.
wait, Amsterdam. Yeah. Oh my God, she was in both of those like 1920.
Anyway, Paul Dano. This is our second tour of duty with him. Um, a lot more normal, I think is the word that all three of us have used in conversations, um, than we've perhaps seen him before. What did you guys think of this turn from him? Because it was kind of a display of range, even though we don't get, you know, he's not going to win an Oscar for this movie. It's not a signature performance, but it still shows, his skill as an actor.
yeah, he's not going to win an award, but he was really good. I mean, I think he played it nicely. There are some like I don't know the way the way he spoke and the cadence was just really fascinating to me. It was really quiet for you know a majority of the lines, but then he had those big outbursts, on the track and when he got excited and but even some of the holy fucking shits that he dropped in the movie were a little quieter, a little more subdued than maybe the you might expect from a movie that just went like overboard with some of the production.
I think like it's weird to watch this performance and like it's a shame the track record that and the name that he's made for himself playing the Riddler and playing the twins from There Will Be Blood and all the other, oddball characters he has where this is such a turn, even though this is as normal a role really as you can play, and he played it super straight. Not that he played it safe in any way, but it was just a typical performance. It was a fine, good performance. And it's weird to look at that and say like, why was Paul Dano the choice for this? He was a good choice. I think he played it well, and that just speaks more to his prior body of work than his performance in this movie and the casting choice.
Yeah, I think, if you put this movie at the beginning of his career, you don't bat an eye saying, "Oh, Paul Dano, he's sort of an unknown, but, you know, he does a good job with, bringing Keith Gill to life." And then you sort of flip it and say, "Oh, now he's going off and doing all of these, Riley, as you said, these oddball characters." Oh, the guy from Dumb Money is playing the Riddler now? Like what's that about? But the way things have actually played out, we end up with looking at him sort of playing the straight man for the first time that I can remember anyway. Um, and or first time in what I've seen from him anyway. Um, and he delivers a really grounded, really natural performance in a role like this. And I think there are a lot of times, especially, and like, say what you will about Shailene Woodley as a person. I've never found her to be particularly enthralling as an actress. I don't really think she's that good. And Paul Dano has to carry a lot of the scenes that they have together. But then you've got moments that he has with Pete Davidson and Clancy Brown, and sort of his world of this film. And he's still like he's the one acting his ass off in a movie that doesn't exactly ask him to do a whole lot, but still requires him to give a certain level of nuance and skill to deliver a biographical performance because that's hard to do. Um,
I ultimately feel the same way about Shailene Woodley that I do about Paul Dano, honestly. I think the scene where Keith Gill says to his family for the first time how much money he made, and he said that he wasn't going to sell, and they're like, "You're fucking crazy," blah blah blah. And Shailene Woodley is really harshly defending him, which felt really real to me. It felt very like Brockton, Massachusetts thing to do, like kind of sticking it to your in-laws and your brother-in-law, like saying like he really knows what he's doing. You need to shut the fuck up and let him, do what he's doing. I think that was a really grounded performance from her, and
it
at the end of the
was
day, it's nothing crazy as well. But I don't think it was a bad performance at all.
Yeah, I mean there was authenticity to it for sure, especially in that moment. I got nothing from her
I
in
mean,
my
she was
perception.
better than she was in the Divergent films. And she was probably about as good as she was in The Fault in Our Stars. So like, kind of can see a bit of the, maybe not the action hero like dystopia kind of actress, but maybe some more of the,
And if
well,
she's
I'm not going to say introspective, but just in other characters.
if she's moving into a phase in her career where she's going to be playing roles like this, I think that she can make a solid career um, playing more grounded roles. But, you know, with the performance track record that she has, and, Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson had a really bad rap for a lot of years from playing the main characters in Twilight. And if they can come out of that, and Kristen Stewart is now an Oscar nominee for Spencer, and Robert Pattinson is fucking Batman now, like Shailene Woodley, go off, prove me wrong. I will, I'll be the first to admit when I enjoy one of your performances as much as I have enjoyed seeing the successes of Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson. So let's get into the rest of the cast here before we get back into the story. I want to talk about Pete Davidson because the kid, God bless him, cannot act. And like I
Really doesn't do it for me.
saw the King of Staten Island. I've seen him cameo in like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I saw him in that. Um, I Want You Back. He was in one scene, but like he played himself on SNL for a bunch of years, and it pretty much worked for him. It got him, name recognition. It has gotten him in the public eye probably for, the rest of his life. He's made it. He's made it. And
He
he
dated Kim Kardashian. I mean,
Kim Kardashian, Ariana Grande, he's building up quite a resume in that arena. But, you know, still doesn't mean he can act. And yet he delivers some of the funny moments of this film.
Yeah,
There
the
are
off-screen
moments.
funny moments.
What's up?
Mom, that's you.
that was funny. Yeah, I mean, he was fine. I mean, this is not the kind of film where you're gonna go mining for award-worthy performances. And I think he fits just because of the nature of them using TikTok is like um and sort of putting those videos into the film and all that stuff. So like he fits that energy of the film well. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's Pete Davidson. Not look, I don't expect much.
Yeah, I guess, we didn't expect much and we didn't get much. Riley, one of your standouts when we were walking out of the theater last night, one of your standouts was Anthony Ramos. Talk to me about
Yeah,
what you got from
yeah,
him
man.
as Marcos.
I think he was the most authentic. He was like the sharpest written. He was the most entertaining for the amount of time he was on screen. And like his relationship with his family felt really real. Like when what was the thing? Oh yeah, he had his phone out and he was trading and he went like this when he was because his mom said it was like drugs. That was a really funny, real moment for me. I
I
I
would
think
not
he
be
did a really
surprised if he
good job.
improvised that.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he did a really good job, I think.
And his interactions with Dane DeHaan, who I don't think I've seen since Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I need to look that up actually. I meant to do that. I need to find out when the last time I saw him was.
If it was Chronicle, we have a problem because that's over 10 years
I
ago.
I'm pretty sure oh he was in Oppenheimer? He must have had a super
Maybe like
small bit role
one
in
scene.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, he had like one
Yeah.
scene. Just like Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid had
Yeah.
one scene too. Like Josh Peck had like three scenes, okay? So
There.
yeah. Um yeah, I mean, fine.
Ramos was great.
Yeah. Dane DeHaan's Rat Tail. Just
Dane
I
DeHaan,
believe that.
I
or
think,
whatever the hell that was. Just
like,
absolutely disgusting.
regardless of whether you're, a Redditor or, someone who runs on a track or someone who is a member of the United States Congress, we've all known someone like Dane DeHaan's character. And a lot of us have worked.
We're supposed to be pushing to the five pillars of the business.
A lot of us have worked for a Dane DeHaan character. So to see that was really relatable. And then Anthony Ramos just playing off of him. Those were some of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah,
Those are fun to watch.
Also seeing Vincent D'Onofrio as Steve Cohen,
Uncle
just knowing what Steve
Steve.
Cohen has done to the Mets.
That was a fun inclusion. It was fun to watch. This pig romping around with his balls
Was
hanging
it
out.
Rufus?
Was
No.
that pig actually there or was that CGI?
Oh, that was probably CGI.
I hope it
That's
I have
was.
to
a
imagine.
bummer. I want to see Vincent D'Onofrio walking around a mansion with this big fat pig walking with him.
Big uncircumcised pig. Not uncircumcised. I mean, what's the neutered, unneutered pig. I'm mixing up my
I'm with you.
my surgeries here.
This is why we don't have you on the pod that often.
Oh, that was the best part. Big pig balls. An update on the Dane DeHaan situation. There's nothing I see on his IMDb that I have seen. So Chronicle is the basis of my Dane DeHaan experience. And this,
Oof.
Chronicle was a trip. I think I gave it half a star on Letterboxd.
yeah, that movie kind of blew.
Yeah. I saw it for my buddy's birthday when I was 14, 15, somewhere in there.
Got
It
it on
was like
DVD.
early 2012. So I guess I was 14. But anyway, I want to talk about the comparisons that this movie has gotten to The Big Short, Adam McKay's Wall Street movie from 5, 10 years ago. Because the similarities are going to be drawn. They're two movies that deal with how regular people interact with hedge funds and interact with Wall Street, making money, losing money, shorting, um, all these jargon words that sort of make up, each of these two films. One of the biggest similarities that I found between the two of them is that, in The Big Short, the worlds of our four main characters, or our five main characters, stay pretty separate. Steve Carell's got his story, Christian Bale's got his story, Ryan Gosling's got his story, Brad Pitt's got his story, and they intertwine a little bit, but Adam McKay mostly keeps them separate. And then what Craig Gillespie does here is sort of dials that to 11 because you see D'Onofrio, Seth Rogen, and Nick Offerman interacting over the phone. America Ferrera's got her story. Anthony Ramos has his story. The two girls in college have their story. Paul Dano and Shailene Woodley and Pete Davidson have their story. Like it's all over the place. And literally the only time some of these characters interact is during the congressional hearing at the end of the film. So I guess my question here is, what do you guys think of the choice to keep all of these independent storylines so independent? And how does that really work for the film?
I think that's the right decision because it emphasizes that this was such a national, heavily covered thing that like people from pockets all around the country are are experiencing this, and it made it feel so much more widespread, which is what it was.
Yeah, I agree. And also just it took place during the pandemic, so we're naturally isolated. I mean, obviously they bring that up a number of times. I mean, I'm trying to think of how many times there was a mass comment just to like put us back in the history of it, like we forgot.
I mean,
And
every
then
time Anthony Ramos lowers his mask, you got Dane DeHaan reminding him
yeah, and
that
also
brought me
with
back.
Gabe Plotkin and everyone like moving down to Florida and bringing their companies for parties and flying them down and all that stuff. It's just like stuff you hear about during the pandemic. And I think it also shows, it highlights some of the inequalities and inequities that this film is trying to address and talk about, because it's showing what these hedge fund managers can do during the pandemic. They have all these resources. They're building fucking tennis courts just to play tennis. They're knocking down a house just to play tennis with their kids. And then you've got Jenny Campbell, I think that's her name, America Ferrera, who is struggling to make ends meet working as an essential worker and has one normal interaction outside of work with that dude at the gas station.
How many of
That
us
was very
had
encouraging.
that
Yeah.
interaction during the pandemic?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So crazy to see someone's whole face, you know what I'm saying? Crazy. Everyone said
Riley,
that
I
like
get
three
the feeling
times.
that you said that phrase a lot.
You said that phrase a lot for sure. We all did. Come on now.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But I think something else like I really like if we're comparing The Big Short in this movie is that this movie kept it like super simple. And in The Big Short they went into like when Christian Bale's like drawing on the whiteboard or whatever he was doing explaining his thinking, there wasn't any of that in this movie, and I think that was the right call because people who are watching this, since this only happened 2 years ago, which I think is a calculated decision that everyone who's seen this movie is very familiar with the events. They know the basics of what happened. And I think The Big Short was directed towards a much larger audience for a larger event. And with the intricacies of what happened in that movie, I think that was a little bit more necessary. But they shot it super straight, kept it dumb simple, and I think that's the right call.
Yeah. Because we don't need to know what's going on. We don't need to know what like stock option. We don't need to know those technical terms for this movie. It matters that the
Mhm.
people in the film know them. Because we're following their stories. We're not following the technicalities of everything that's going on. We don't need that.
Right. And when we get such a, you know, broad array, a symphony, if you will, of storylines that all coalesce yet remain separate. Maybe I just have that on the mind because I just came from an orchestra concert. But, what we get is different real people. Talk about first responders and college kids and Redditors and people, who run hedge funds, all reacting to the situation. You know, there's something for everyone to grab onto. And Riley, I absolutely agree with what you said. It's a lot more accessible than The Big Short. I think we end up with a film that presents a crazy few months on Wall Street in a way that, you know, you're not reaching out yonder to understand what's going on. You're you're getting something not spoon fed to you, but
The simplest version of that thing.
you're getting a film that is the simplest version of that thing, but also trusts you as an audience member. And I'm not saying Adam McKay did not do this. He did it to a much smaller extent, but you get a film that trusts you to let it say its piece. And I think what we get from this film more so than The Big Short is a film that allows us to experience a narrative story that, yeah, it's you can't write this shit as it happened in real life. It's too insane to see how, Wall Street bets took over basically the entire financial market for a couple months. And, we're presented with something that just slows it down and gives it to us in a way that we can understand,
Mhm.
not having been a part of the, chaos.
No one's going to see the new Seth Rogen, Paul Dano stock movie to learn about what actually happened. They want to be entertained in a however long the movie was. What was it? Hour 45, hour
45.
50. Yeah. Short, to the point, get in and get out. Don't spend too long, hammering all the details and having Paul Dano explain his thinking and, show me the numbers, show me his balance sheet. Like,
God, if they had
that
had like
was
one fourth wall break where Paul Dano just turns to the camera and says, "All right, here's what this means," and then you get an explainer, like you had the text pop up on the screen for each new character you were being introduced to, saying, "Hey, here's what this character's name is. Here's where they are. Here's what their net worth is." And now you know everything that you need to know about them for their role in the story. And then at the end, we get sort of that full circle moment where we find out how they're doing afterwards.
Mhm.
And I think that, we don't need to have everything, like I said before, spoon fed to us. There's a certain level of, you know, understanding that goes into a film like this on both sides, the side of the audience and the side of the filmmakers.
totally no notes, George. You're the best.
Thanks, Riley. I know. I mean, you are too.
Oh,
So when it comes to a movie like this, when we see a story, a biographical story brought to film about events more than people, do you think that, it matters how the people, because there are real people in this story who were involved in the GameStop stock craze of 2021. Do you think it matters more if the events are portrayed accurately or the characters are portrayed more accurately?
um, I probably the event, right? Like, let's take let's take Harmony and who was the other character's name?
Riri.
Riri, Harmony and Riri. Like, let's like I don't think every detail about their life needs to be. I don't know anything about the real characters' real stories. I think for totally film purposes, I think it's important that they had a relationship and they were close. They both cared about this equally, and they went through every high and low that the stock market took them on, and it showed the volatility of the situation, the severity of the situation, that people who have no money to their names and have really important school loans to pay off were taking a chance on this, and no matter what, writing it out, and even after they took their money out of it, were willing to put their money back in, even if that didn't happen, even if they didn't, those two specific characters or the people that those characters were based off didn't take their money out when Wall Street bets got shut down and then put their money back in. I think that's a really interesting wrinkle that could have been added just for dramatic purposes to show what was really happening.
I think so too. I mean, all of these people could be real, they could not be real. It doesn't really matter. They're telling stories that can resonate with a wide net of people. Um, like Riley said, you've got the college kids struggling with student loan debt. Um, you've got GameStop employee or just generally an employee at a retail store that hates his boss and wants to get the fuck out of there. Um, Essential worker during the pandemic. I mean, all of these people, right? You can look at and you can say, okay, that's fine, but I don't really need to know that much more for this kind of a story. I mean, The Big Short. If we're gonna look at The Big Short, you kind of need to know who these people are because they're intimately involved with the inner workings of how this collapse came to be. I mean, there's some, I think, liberties, obviously, but there's much more detail about who these people are in that film, but it makes sense for that. It doesn't really for this.
Yeah, I guess where I'm coming from with this, and I agree with each of you, um, the portrayal of the events in a film about the events means more. Because like we've done biographical films on the pod before. We did Gran Turismo a couple weeks ago, um, and they threw in uh, Jan Mardenborough's deadly crash at Nürburgring. I think I'm saying that right, which happened years after the events portrayed, most of the events portrayed in the film. Bohemian Rhapsody, one of my favorite biographical films, really mostly about the character, mostly about Freddie Mercury, and Rami Malek has gotten all the praise in the world for his performance, duly so. But the AIDS diagnosis didn't come before Live Aid. You know, Freddie wasn't the first person to go solo. There are always, Max, as you said, liberties taken when doing a biographical film. And from what I have seen, and I don't know all the details of what happened with GameStop a couple years ago, but this was, and maybe it's the inclusion of real questioning from congressional members. Maybe it's, all of the explainers put on screen, the limited explainers, but still. But this seems as true to life without being a documentary as it could possibly have been. So I think for a biographical film, you know, this is a film about the events, not the characters. And I think it delivers on that promise of telling the audience, showing the audience what happened, in a very, very grounded and realistic way.
Yep.
So,
Agree.
so what do you guys think of the inclusion of our good friends in the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate?
Dude, AOC is so her. It's not even funny. She's so mother. She's crazy. So I'm understanding, I forget exactly the quote, but she's unhinged and I'm all about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big part of it, right? I think it's not so much that this GameStop thing happened, and that retail traders were able to disrupt. It's about how the entities around them, specifically the government agencies, the hedge fund managers, all those kinds of people that control the flow of money and all of that. It's what they did next and how they responded. That's the bigger story. That's what the focus is, even though we don't really get that much of that in the film itself, right? We get maybe 15, 20 minutes at the end of the film to just kind of go through not the hearings, the preparation for the hearings, all that stuff. We don't get that. We don't get a ton of it. But I think it's the most important part of the film because it will impact not only policy legislation for the next 10, 15, 20 years, but it will also sort of serve as like a time capsule in history of like this happened again. We had this big financial thing that happened in our country, and this is how we responded in 2008, 2009. We're doing a very similar thing here in allowing the people with the money to escape scot-free without being held accountable in ways that are substantive or productive, right? 85% of hedge fund managers now troll the internet to get tips from people like Keith Gill. Like they're prepping for this. And it is kind of like they're battening down the hatches of like this won't happen again because they're filling in their deficiencies and preparing for like the next time that this happens.
Yeah, but someone some way is going to find a way to short the system. There's going to be a loophole, because nobody thought the GameStop thing could happen. It did. So
Be there at the ground floor this time. Not gonna make this mistake twice.
Oh my God.
Riley wants in. And just one more note on the, you know, being based on events and staying true to that, the inclusion of the congressional hearing. I want to give credit to the two women who wrote the script, Lauren Schuker Bloom and Rebecca Angelo. The two of them seamlessly worked real questioning and real testimony into a narrative where we could see the real life impact of this film without, you know, going to the credits and then watching the footage of the actual testimony. Like they were able to weave it in a way that presented it as part of the narrative rather than saying this is what we based it on, both on the part of the writers and by Gillespie as the director. And, you know, for the actors, you know, you have the source material of being able to watch the real life testimony to take and inspire your performances, but also you're not acting opposite anyone. You know, you've got probably video files of the hearings as your scene partner. And so I want to give credit to the actors, the director, the writers to really make this as true to life as possible. And I think that's the goal with any biographical is
Mhm.
just bonkers.
Yeah.
So rating everyone, 4 stars. That's mine.
I
What do we
tossed it
got?
4.
Yeah, it's a good one. 4 is fine.
I think this film, a couple weeks ago, I named it as my highest anticipated for the rest of the year. I think the trailer
Over
really, really
Killers of the
hyped.
Flower Moon is nuts. That's coming out this year, right?
Flower
Yeah.
Moon
Yeah,
is coming out
like
next
next
month.
month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought my ticket to Flower Moon earlier today.
I got a new trailer
For
for that actually.
I paid $1.39 for my ticket to Flower Moon. Get at me. So excited. But anyway, I
Cool. Didn't
named
ask.
I named Dumb Money as well. I go to the movies so often that Fandango gives me a reward of $5 every like 4 tickets. If you haven't known about that, get on that. Go to the movies more often. You get money to go see movies. Do a movie podcast, and maybe someone will pay you to go see movies. Please, please, someone pay us to go see movies. Dumb Money was highest anticipated for the rest of the year as of like beginning of this month, and it never got to be as great as I wanted it to, but I can put it in the class of very good. And when we do top fives at the end of the year, it's not going to be in my top five. Might not even be in my top 10 because of how strong this year has been. But Dumb Money is absolutely worth the watch, absolutely worth going to a theater to see it. You know, support your local movie theaters, support this movie, support SAG-AFTRA. WGA got their deal. Actors, go get yours. Get what you're worth.
We'll get your Fandango deal, your $1.30 Fandango deal to deal with the writers going on strike for like 5 months.
Well,
Very
say
equivalent.
not what I do. I don't even
Yeah.
know if that makes sense. But at the end of last week's episode, I said what I was going to say at the end of this week's episode. So Dumb Money is currently playing in movie theaters. Go check it out. The three of us all recommend it. Ben and Declan haven't seen it yet, so they can't recommend it, but I'm sure they want to see it. They wanted to be here tonight. Life happens. Um, so check out Dumb Money. We will be back next week with our 102nd episode, and I promise we will not be counting every single episode between now 150 and 200. Until next week, Riley, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hopping in on the last minute sort of substitution, but we're glad to have you.
Lovely.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Max, I'll see you next week.
All right, fine.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
I like the stock.